Hello and welcome to my channel. I want to do something really special. What I want to share with you is my tribute to the New Testament Church of God. It has reached a significant milestone in 70 years, and I felt it would be important and interesting for me to share with you my tribute. I would first classify my Christian journey as the New T being the foundation of my spiritual growth. And funny enough, I would classify myself as a New T baby. And I would say this because my journey goes all the way back to the day I was dedicated. Now I'm sure that most of you would recognize the minister holding me as a baby. That is Pastor Henry. He used to serve as a member of the NEC, the National Executive Council, and he also pastored Southampton, Sheffield, and of course Clapton. Now, one of the things that played a huge part in my spiritual growth was this booklet right here. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with this booklet. Whenever you prepare for baptism or membership, you have to, and it's vital to go through this booklet. And I say this because it wouldn't make any sense if you get baptized or you take white hand of fellowship and you don't know what the church stands for. Now, one of the things that stand out to me in the Declaration of Faith is point number 7. Holiness to be God's standard of living for his people. I really want to highlight this point because not many churches are serious about holiness. And this is why I fully respect New T as well as many other churches that are serious about holiness and sanctification. And even for me personally, when I view preachers like Pastor Jennings on YouTube, I can take the hard-hitting holiness preaching because I get it from UT. And I know that there are many people who want to hear what they want to hear. But the truth is, holiness is more important. So my respect goes out to all the churches, including UT, that preach and are serious about holiness. I am grateful for the national events held by NTCG. I say this because they have really had a great influence in my spiritual growth. First of all, with Boys to Men, held by Life Builders. They really helped me to develop and grow into a man. And I'm grateful for the many programs and the mini workshops that I attended, because I'm very serious about being nurtured. I'm very serious about being surrounded by men who can pour into me, and have men that I could look up to. Where would I be if it wasn't for these men? Now, in terms of the National Youth, they gave me a clear insight with the conventions. And that insight being, this is the future church. And you don't have to wait until you reach, middle age. You can start to serve him from a young age, as long as you're trained up and nurtured in the right way. And for me personally, I really enjoyed being part of the National Youth Mass Choir. I'm glad that even within 3 years of being up there. I used my voice to give God glory. And I'm glad that I represented Clapton in the national events. And I really want to mention the Mass Choir Code of Conduct. And I saw how serious it was. The leaders were very serious about, our dress code and, dressing modestly. And to, have the heart of serving God. It's not about how good you look on the choir stand. It's really about how you represent yourself as a vessel and allowing God to use you to win souls for His kingdom. So really, humility plays a huge part in every capacity in church, whether national, district or local. But even going back to the Mass Choir Code of Conduct, I want to really give mention to John Ankle from Brixton Church. When it came to dressing modestly, there was one rule that he mentioned to us. And he mentioned no KFC. And when I first heard that, I was like, what does KFC have to do with singing? But in terms of, dressing modestly, he said, wear clothes that don't show thigh, leg, or wing. But anyway, the Women's Empowerment Conference, I can cast my mind back to October 2004 when I got saved, and it was Reverend Muriel Joyce Arnold, who was the wife of our late Dr. S.E. Arnold, and I can remember she preached about the woman and the alabaster box and how powerful that story was. So those three national departments played a huge role in my upbringing. And now for my favourite part of my tribute is the church history. Where do I begin? I really love reading on the history of our church, and just to summarise the 70 years, I would briefly, mark it in 2 words: remarkable faith. The reason why I sum up the 70 years in 2 words, remarkable faith, is that there have been so many mountains and valleys over the years where many people went through racism and many other obstacles. But I really commend to those of you who stood your ground. And it's only by the grace of God that we made it this far, and we continue to go even further. So I'm grateful for 70 years and counting. I'm grateful to, read about the humble beginnings. Your history didn't start from church buildings. Your history started from resident homes. Very small apartments, like what we call as bedsits or studio flats. You held your prayer meetings and other services in those small apartments. Even during the cold weather and how thick the fog was back then, I really commend all of those who stood their ground during those times. And for me personally, I like reading on resources like the book Where Do We Go From Here by Pastor Ira Brooks, and also From Skepticism to Hope by Reverend Selwyn Arnold. And I love reading about the church planting. When I read about ministers like Pastor Curtis Gray, who planted churches in the northern regions, in Leeds and in Wales, with Pastor Ronaldo Brown. They worked together to plant churches in Newport and Cardiff. And of course, how can I forget Bishop S.U. Thompson, Brixton Church's first minister. He was involved in planting churches in Catford, and Catford became what we know today as a Lee Church. Thornton Heath, what we know today as West Croydon Church. The Kilburn Church, what we know today as Willesden Church. Those churches were birthed from Brixton, and it's so interesting to read upon the history there. And of course there's one other name, Bishop Felix Poyser, who was involved in planting the Sheffield Church. And those were really the few examples that I had in mind. There are many other brethren and other ministers who planted churches up and down the country, and I really commend them for that. I'm grateful for reading upon the backbone of NTCG. Well, I simply view it as the Windrush / Caribbean backbone of the New Tea. And like I said before, remarkable faith. It's not only those who came by the Empire Windrush, but those who came here by plane. And I'm really thankful for those who built a solid foundation for future generations to build up on. And what I will say is that I really admire your obedience to the call. The Caribbean nations were part of the British Empire, and when Great Britain called for the Caribbean nations to support them during World War II, you responded obediently. And also post World War II, to help rebuild the nation, you responded obediently, and I commend you for that. When I read upon the history of our church, it's very interesting that most of the branches have similar stories in how they started. Even when, when they moved into the churches, it wasn't as if those church buildings were ready for worship. Many work had to be done. A lot of decorating, plumbing, and all sorts. Many of you who sacrificed your wages and had partner schemes and many other ways of raising funds. And it's great to read that many churches were blessed with good tradesmen, plumbers, electricians, decorators, glaziers, so forth. But it's great to know about the church history and where you came from, even where we are today and where we're heading to. And that brings me to my conclusion. I'm thankful for the leaders who led our church over the years. Dr. Oliver Lysight, 1953 to 1978. Dr. Jeremiah McIntyre, 1978 to 1984. Dr. Selwyn Arnold, 1984 to 1994. Dr. R.O. Brown, 1994 to 2002. Dr. Eric Brown, 2002 to 2014. Bishop Donald Bolt, 2014 to 2022. And Bishop Crayon Granderson, 2022 to this present moment. And finally, I'd like to mention a person who inspired me to start my Christian channel. I was listening to his word of encouragement, but it sounded like a sermon. And that person is Bishop Winston Taylor. I was listening to that sermon and it really touched me. The sermon was Preach the Word. And for those of you who want to hear it, the link is in the description below. I deeply apologize for how condensed my tribute was. I wish I had more time, but I had to consider the battery life on this camera, so that's why my tribute sounds very brief. But with what you did hear, I hope you did enjoy it, and thank you for watching. God bless, and subscribe for more content. Thank you.